All right, welcome everybody. My name is Brooke Pfautz. I am founder and CEO of Vintory. Vintory is a sales and marketing platform that helps professional vacation rental managers grow their inventory. So we are going to be going over today a presentation called Vacation Rental Inventory Data and Metrics, a guide to measuring and improving what really matters. So much of this information was taken from our work with over 150 different vacation rental managers and helping them grow their inventory. So we've taken this data directly from them and we're going to be sharing it with you. Now, I will apologize in advance. Much of this presentation is going to be based around data and math and metrics. So if you don't like data and metrics, this is going to be a long 40 minutes. So with that said, let's get started. All right, I love this quote. Good old Lord Kelvin, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So here's what we're going to be going over today. First off, we're going to be talking about the value of vacation rental inventory, right? Not only the annuity aspect of it, right? The cash flow you make year after year after year, as long as that property stays in your rental program, but we're also going to talk about the value at exit. Next, we're going to jump over to vacation rental target data, right? Where to get it and how you can optimize it. And we're going to round it out with vacation rental inventory metrics, right? What are the 6 key metrics that every vacation rental company should be tracking and how you compare versus your competitors? So let's get started. So first up, we're going to be talking about value of inventory. I found that very few vacation rental managers have actually gone through the exercise of understanding the value of adding one new property to your rental program. And it is a shame because I would argue there isn't a better ROI on the planet than adding new vacation rental inventory. So let's get into it. So I've been in the vacation rental industry since 2007, and I've been lucky to see it from multiple angles, not only from starting my own vacation rental company from scratch, but also as an exec at a large property management software company. And what we realized was when we were able to look at reports and data in aggregate, that the average gross booking revenue came out to about $35,000 or $36,000 per year per property. Now, this is in aggregate across $1 billion worth of reservations. Now, I know many people that are watching this, they wouldn't even take a property on that's doing $36,000, and that may be a little bit light. But for the sake of this presentation today, this is what we're going to be using as our baseline example. And what we've also found after talking to 150 different companies is the average commission is typically about 20%. So in this example, we're looking at $7,200 in commissions. And the average margin, so what, or EBITDA or net profit, what falls to the bottom line as a percentage of the gross booking revenue is about 10%. And again, we've seen this. This is probably kind of within the statistical bell curve. We see 80% of all vacation rental managers net about 10% of the gross booking revenue. So in this example for today, we're going to be using $3,600 as net margins, otherwise known as EBITDA or profit. All right, so here's what it looks like. Value of one property after 1 year: $36,000 in GBR, $7,200 in commissions, $3,600 in margins. But you don't keep a property in your rental program for 1 year, hopefully, right? Hopefully you keep it in much longer. I guarantee you, sometimes you keep a property in your rental program for a year. Sometimes you've had these properties that have been with you since the very beginning. So how do you understand and how do you calculate the customer lifetime? Well, it's a very simple formula. You just take customer lifetime is 1 divided by churn. The industry average, what we found after, again, surveying all of our partners, is the industry average churn is about 10%, which equates to a 10-year lifetime. So you take 1 divided by your churn rate, and that gives you a 10-year lifetime in years, right? Now, I will say this last year with the hot real estate market, we've seen across the board the churn being a little bit higher than that. So that's what we usually take and recommend, kind of getting an average of about 3 to 4 years of what your churn is as a percentage, and gives you a good baseline. So here's an interesting report that was just released. According to Vicasa's investor presentation back in July, it was released just this past July, they had a churn of 22%, believe it or not, which equates to a 4.6-year lifetime, which is by far the lowest we've seen across our board of all of our partners. And we thought that was pretty interesting and also fairly high. Now, to give them the benefit of the doubt, the majority of Vicasa's inventory has been done through mergers and acquisitions. So therefore, the churn is a little bit higher. I've heard the churn is as high as 30% after M&A. But again, those numbers aren't validated. All right, so here's how it looks like after 10 years. You've got $360,000 in gross booking revenues. You've got $72,000 in commissions, and you've netted about $36,000 in net margins. Not bad. And again, most vacation rental managers have never actually calculated the lifetime value of one new property. Now, I would argue that these numbers are actually a little bit light, because what happens over time, over 10 years, rental income does not stay stagnant, right? It's going to go up, it's going to appreciate, and we're seeing appreciation, especially this last year. I mean, that's a little bit of an outlier, an anomaly, but we are seeing inflation at least 5 to 7% or higher. So that number is actually a little bit light, and this number is going to actually grow a little bit more. All right, so here's a quick little hack. Assuming you are in line with industry averages and you have 10% net margins and you've got 10% churn, your gross booking revenue is equal to your lifetime value, right? So a $50,000 property is going to be worth $50,000 in lifetime value. A property doing $100,000 in gross booking revenue is going to net you $100,000 in lifetime value. So I want you to associate, whenever you sign up a new property and you project that is going to do $75,000 this year in gross booking revenue. Well, if you're in industry averages with churn and net margins, you're going to make $75,000 over the life of that property being in your rental program, which again is pretty fantastic. All right, so let's say hotshot, you go out there and you add 10 properties this year. And what's the value of that over the next 10 years? Here we go. 3.6 million in GBR and $360,000 in margins. So it's pretty significant. So not only do you get this great cash flow, right, from the, of your vacation rental inventory, but if and when you decide to sell your company, you are going to get a check for every one of those properties that's in your rental program. Your inventory and those management contracts, that is the true value of your vacation rental company. I hate to say it. It's not your great operations center. It's not your guest database. It's not your, cool wrap trucks. The true value of your vacation rental company are those management contracts. So I want you to associate every new property as a pile of cash because that's exactly what it is. All right. So how much is every property worth? To be clear, this is not a session on valuing vacation rental companies. Dylan Burgess in our M&A division or Jacoby Olin could give that presentation and last the entire 40 minutes. I'm going to keep it just very, very simple for today's examples here. So the most popular method of valuing a vacation rental manager is on a multiple of earnings. And most companies are valued on a multiple of their net earnings, which is also known as their profit or EBITDA, right? So it ranges anywhere between 3 and 5.5 times that EBITDA number, right? So for today's example, we're just going to take an average. We're just going to use a 4 times multiplier, okay? So remember from before, we had $3,600 in EBITDA from that property. You multiply that times 4, you're going to get a value of $14,400 for every single new property you add. So if you go out there and add one new property this year and you keep it and you go to sell, you'll get an extra $14K at settlement. All right. Let's say you go out there and grow 10 properties this year. You're going to get an extra $144,000 at exit. If you go out there and add 20 properties, you're going to get an extra $288,000 at exit. Now, if you want to reverse engineer that, let's say you need to retire and you need to get an extra $1 million to pay for that big house in Hilton Head Island. Well, guess what? Let's reverse engineer that. That means we need to net 70 properties to get that extra $1 million. Again, not bad. And I imagine most people have not gone through and actually done the math on what they need to do to hit these numbers. All right. So there's obviously a ton more involved in exit valuations. I would recommend, again, talking to Dylan Burgess and our M&A team. Or if you're interested in understanding more about the value of your company, you can check out this really cool interactive calculator we built on our website. Just go to vintory.com/MA-consulting, and it will give you an idea of all the different add backs and specifics that you need to put in there. And it'll even give you different valuation methods that you have. So it gives a good range of exactly what your company is worth. Go check it out on vintory.com/MA-consulting. All right. So the foundation of a solid inventory acquisition plan, it all starts with data, right? Without a solid data file, it doesn't matter how good your marketing campaigns are if they're not hitting the right target, right? So these are the tips and tricks I've learned over the last 14 years. And also the tips and tricks we've learned of, again, implementing this with over 150 vacation rental management companies. All right, so here's what we're going to go over in regards to data. First up, where do you get that data from? Then we're going to talk about the best way to merge data. Then we're going to talk about appending, right? What is it, how to append, and what it also allows you to do. Then we're going to talk about why segmentation is important. And then we're going to round it out with data visualization. All right, let's kick in. All right, so data is one of the most underestimated tools for inventory acquisition. I've heard that 50% of all marketing just comes down to the list. So first up, where do you get that list? There's a couple different sources out there. The first place that you should go, because it's free and it's usually the most up to date, is tax records. Very often, sometimes these tax records databases are associated with MLS services. So could be a city, this could be county, this could be state tax records. The reason you go there first, again, it's free, it's up to date, but it can sometimes be challenging to download. There's some townships or some counties where it's super simple to download. Others, it's very complex, right? It's you can only download one at a time. And you have to have a computer programming degree just to be able to download multiple records. So if that's the case, what we would recommend doing, the next source is going to list brokers. List brokers are obviously going to be the easiest to do. You just have to pay for the data, right? And it's not that expensive. It ranges anywhere between 8 and 50 cents per record, depending on how much information you get. The thing with list brokers, though, is there's a million of them out there. Just Google search it. I mean, there's Info USA, there's Exact Data, there's a ton of them. A couple key points, what you want to do when getting list broker data. The first is you want to request absentee owner data. And absentee owner data is usually an indicator of a real estate investor because the mailing address and the property address are different, right? So you want to get that. And the second thing you want to do when shopping list brokers is ask if they can append data and they can get emails and phones. And we'll talk about in some later slides why getting emails and phones is important. All right, throwing it over next, and one that's often missed is vacation rental permit data. So if your local city or county requires a vacation rental permit, they have to release that information to you. Now, they do not make it easy. I can tell you from personal experience. But if they push back, you just mentioned due to the Freedom of Information Act, I want this list, and they have to provide it for you. But again, they don't need to make it easy. I've had cases where I had to drive to the local county courthouse, actually pay with a check, and they gave me the information like 3 weeks later on a CD-ROM. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't even have any devices that actually can read CD-ROMs, so we have that challenge too. So again, they don't need to make it easy. But then there's other cities like Nashville where it's super, super simple. Last but not least is scrape data. So there's a couple different places you could scrape. You could technically scrape the OTAs. You could scrape your competitors' websites as long as they show the property addresses. You could scrape the large venture-backed national conglomerates websites and get that data. So, when you have all this information, though, now you've got this, killer list, that really gets you started. But one thing to note, some states, especially the ones that fall into real estate laws, you technically are not allowed to do this, solicit the listings of other brokers. So you may not be able to do this. So be sure to check with your local, state or county if you're allowed to actually, do this method. All right, so now you have all this data, right? What are you going to do with it? So the first thing you need to do is you need to merge it into one spreadsheet. You need to dedupe all that data into one file, and you want to remove your existing owners. And this is going to give you a really nice, neat, and clean database that you can use as your foundation. Now, unless you have mad Excel skills, this is not an easy process. That's why at Vintory, we have 4 data scientists that focus exclusively on this part. However, I recognize most vacation rental managers are small businesses. They can't afford to hire a data science team. So what I would recommend you do is just go to Upwork and Fiverr. In fact, almost everybody you see on the screen right here was actually found on Upwork or Fiverr. And the beauty of Upwork and Fiverr is you can hire them on just a part-time contract basis. You can get to see how they work, get to see the quality of their work. And then if you want, then you can promote them and hire them more of a full-time basis. But again, super simple to do. Just put a post on Upwork and you can hire some of these data scientists. All right, so now we're going to talk about appending data sources. So appending means you are filling in any missing information to your target's records, right? So you have your target, and if you wanted to, let's say you scrape those addresses or scrape those properties, but you need to then append it to get their mailing addresses, right? And then you need to append to get emails and phones. And why this is important is because when you have this information now, you can now market to your target on an omni-channel marketing approach versus just sending 1 or 2, postcards a year. So why omni-channel? because when you combine all these strategies versus treating each as a silo, it has a compounding effect, right? It's the definition of synergy. 1 + 1 = 3. So the old days of sending 1 or 2 postcards per year are long gone, and those are for yesterday's managers. Today's top vacation rental managers are executing this proactive omni-channel marketing approach you see here. And by doing so, again, it has that boost effect on all the other marketing campaigns. But the key point of this entire part is, in order to pull off this omni-channel marketing approach, you have to have a great database that is, it's appended and it's got all the different ways of contacting these people. So again, go get a great database, and then you can execute this omni-channel marketing approach you see right here. All right. We also recommend segmenting your target list. And first up, we're going to talk about segmenting by your ICP. ICP stands for ideal customer profile, right? So what we like to do is we like to segment into the A's, the B's, and C targets. And A's, we like to hit on a monthly cadence. B's, we like to hit on a quarterly cadence. And C's, we like to hit on an annual cadence. Now, you can also kind of segment by your marketing channel. So for our A targets, we're hitting with everything we have. Our B targets, we're hitting with, maybe just direct mail, email, and list-based retargeting, or otherwise known as custom audiences. And our C targets, we're maybe just hitting with direct mail and email on that annual basis. So again, you can segment not only by your targets, but also by your marketing campaigns. We also recommend segmenting by persona. Why is this important? Because different personas have different pain points, right? And you could change up that messaging to each persona based on those pain points. For example, your pain points for RBO Ruby, right? Rent by owner Ruby, are going to be very different than venture-backed Victor, right? So you want to change the messaging for each one of those personas when you send it out through all those different channels. So again, this custom messaging really increases your response rates and conversion rates. All right, so here's an example of a database for one of our partners and how we segment by our ICPs, our ideal customer profiles, and also by our persona. So if you do it this way, it becomes really easy to manage and run all your campaigns in the future. All right, so you've got all this great data, right? You got this killer data, but it's sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere, and that's really no fun. That's pretty boring, right? It's kind of complicated to pull out and do things. So what we recommend is using a data visualization tool. You can use something like Tableau. It can be, but Tableau is pretty pricey. It can be as simple as My Google Maps, right? Highly recommend My Google Maps. But the one we really recommend is Batch Geo. So why is this important? And data visualization as a whole? It's first because it's much easier to see on a map, right, than a spreadsheet. Second, you can do like some hyper targeting by like drawing polygons around and export those lists very easily. So let me give you an example. So let's say you have this one vacation rental manager just went out of business. And then you have the data in here. You can actually like draw like a polygon around that one little community, and it will actually export that data into a separate list. And then you can do a hyper, like, a local targeting marketing campaign directly to those people on that one. I've even, last but not least, I guess it also helps you by seeing any kind of outliers or anomalies. So not only do you have the list of where the properties are located, but you can actually do we recommend doing maps for where the property owners live, right? So I heard a story of one gentleman where he found that a bunch of owners in Hilton Head Island all lived in this one little town in Ohio. So what did he do? He actually went to that town, rented a hotel conference room, did a real estate investor seminar on how you can own real estate in Hilton Head and how vacation rentals can help pay for it. And he put on this seminar, ended up selling like 2 or 3 homes on the real estate side, but he also ended up, I think he ended up even getting the management contracts for this as well. But again, none of this would have been possible without data visualization, and also with these kind of sources. All right, now we're going to round it out with vacation rental inventory metrics. So as I mentioned before, been in the industry for a long time, but really the last 5 years, even though I've been in the vacation rental market, I've focused on SaaS, or software as a service type businesses. And I've really nerded out on metrics, right? I've really gotten into it. And what I realized was there's tons of parallels between SaaS metrics and vacation rental businesses. So there's these huge parallels between SaaS and vacation rentals. They both have predictable recurring revenue. They both have great margins. And it's just very similar. And a lot of these metrics would come through. So I figured you could actually measure the health of a vacation rental company by looking at these metrics, right? So let's dig in and look at some of those most popular metrics. First up is CAC. CAC stands for customer acquisition cost, and it means what is the cost to generate a new customer, or in this case, a new property into our rental program. Let's do a quick little simple example. So if you send out 1,000 letters at $1 each, and you get a 0.5% response rate, which is what the Direct Marketing Association says is the average response rate in direct mail, that nets you 5 calls. Out of those 5 calls, let's say you have a 20% conversion rate, which is pretty decent. That nets you 1 contract. So what's your CAC in this example? Pretty simple. 1 contract, spend $1,000. Your CAC is $1,000. Okay. So that's our baseline of what we're going to be using for our examples for the rest of the presentation. All right. So think about it. You have this, you've had this outlay of $1,000, but remember going back to our example before, but we've done, this property doing $36,000 in gross booking revenue, but we have this, this outlay of $1,000, but we have this great stream of income of $300 for as long as this property stays in our rental program. Okay. So here's what it looks month by month in year 1. Here's what it looks like on a cumulative basis after year 1, right? So after 3.3 months, like our CAC has been covered, right? And then from month 2 to month 12 is all profit. So we're up $2,600. And then from, if we look at it on a lifetime basis, we're up $35,000. So again, I would argue there isn't a better ROI on the planet than investing in inventory acquisition. So this example right here, you spend $1,000, you're getting $36,000 in profits. So you're net positive $35K. Again, not bad. All right, let's talk about unit economics. So the definition is pretty simple. Can I make more profit from my customers than it cost me to acquire them? And there's 3 main metrics we're going to look at. First is ROI, return on investment. We're going to talk about CAC recovery. And then we're going to talk about LTV to CAC ratio, which is lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. So let's drill down on each one of these. So again, remember, return on investment, for every dollar I invest in inventory acquisition, how much am I making in profit? So the first year ROI, we looked and we target for all of our partners, we're targeting about 1 time. So we want to kind of cover that ROI in first year. The best companies, kind of the best in breed companies, best in class companies are doing about a 10X. And on a 5-year ROI, we're targeting 4X. And then the top companies out there are 20X. All right, now let's shift gears to CAC recovery. So CAC recovery, again, means how many months does it take to recover our customer acquisition costs? So remember this slide from before? Well, technically our CAC recovery was 3.3 in this one. So what we're shooting for, the guide that we sent for our partners, and the goal is we want that CAC recovery to be anything less than 12 months. If we do that, we know we're home free, especially if we're keeping a property in our rental program for 10 years on average. But the best companies out there, kind of best in class, they're doing it in less than 4 months. Now, a lot of this depends on your, on the average gross booking revenue, right? So if you've got a property doing $100,000, you know what I mean? You obviously can afford to spend a little bit more on the CAC. All right, now we're going to talk about LTV to CAC ratio. So the lifetime of profits of a property versus the cost to acquire them. So this is the holy grail of all metrics, right? If you only track one metric, you've got one metric on your KPI dashboard for all your other metrics. This is the one. And why? Because it takes into account all the key factors of profit margins. It takes into account churn, and it also takes into account acquisitions costs. So again, this is the holy grail of all metrics. So what we're looking for with our partners, we're looking for a ratio, kind of our goal we're setting is a 20-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. The best companies out there, the top companies out there are a 40-to-1. And I thought this was interesting. According to the Vacasa slide deck on their investor presentation, they estimated 2021, their LTV to CAC ratio was going to be 5-to-1. Now, I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if we're comparing apples to apples on these. With Vintory, the way these Vintory metrics work, we do not include onboarding costs, and we also don't include staffing. So we may not be comparing apples to apples. And the reason we don't do that is it's just too hard to track. It's too complicated. There's too many variables. We want to keep it very simple. And a lot of times, what we found is most vacation rental managers, the people doing the business development work are usually owners or GMs, and it's just too hard to allocate their hours to this to understand what they really do. All right, so if you have a solid LTV to CAC ratio and you have a systematic way of generating new properties, back up a truck full of cash because you literally and invest it back in your business because you have a money-making machine. You virtually have a ATM where you're putting dollar bills on one side and it is spitting out 20s and 50s on the other side. Plus, if and when you decide to sell your business, you're going to get a check for every one of those properties. So again, I would argue there's not a better time to grow your inventory than right now. All right, so let's do a quick little unit economics summary. So ROI, we are shooting for 1x. And top companies out there are doing a 4x. 5-year ROI, we're looking for a 10x is our goal we're setting. Best in breed companies are doing a 20x. CAC recovery, months to recover that CAC, we really are shooting. Our goal is to keep that under 12 months or a year. The top companies out there are doing it in less than 4 months. And then the LTV to CAC ratio, the holy grail of all metrics, we're looking for a goal of 20 to 1. And then the top companies are doing 41. All right. Let's go, and we're going to round it out with a couple more metrics here. So we're going to talk about CPL and CAC. CPL stands for cost per lead, and CAC, obviously, we know what it is. So let's just see what kind of the industry averages are. So what we've seen now, this does not count like free sources, right? This is really, and it's not even like a blended cost, right? This is just anything where you're doing a proactive outreach, like direct mail, PPC, list-based retargeting, otherwise known as custom audiences, and then IP targeting. So this is more of the paid marketing search, proactive search. So we're looking for a cost per lead. We see across the board for our partners anywhere between $200 to $300 cost per lead. We're seeing conversion rates that are anywhere falling that 10 to 25%, which nets you a customer acquisition cost of anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000. Now, if I were to say, here you go, vacation rental manager Jones, you're making, you have a $50,000 property. It's going to make you $50,000 in net profit over the course of the lifetime of this. Would you pay $1,000 to $3,000 for that $50,000 in net profit? And the answer better be absolutely. Again, if you have a predictable way to do this, recurring way to do this, back up a truck and invest it into your business. Because again, you are going to get tons of returns from that. All right, so I know we went through all these metrics really quickly. There's a ton of math out there, a ton of math involved, but we've made this really cool tool. We've built this cool interactive calculator that you can enter in all of your information, and it is going to spit out every metric you need, right? It's going to spit out the cost per lead. It's going to spit out the CAC. It's going to give you your ROI, your CAC recovery, your LTV to CAC ratio, everything. Just email me at brooke@vintory.com, BROOKE @vintory.com, and I will send you the link directly to this really cool interactive calculator. All right, so that is it, y'all. I really appreciate your time. So here's some quick takeaways. First up, there is no better investment than adding new vacation rental inventory. Number 2, the lifetime value of a property, remember, in profits is going to equal that gross booking revenue. Invest in a solid database up front and make sure you hire some nerds to help you with those spreadsheets. And then execute an omnichannel marketing plan. Number 5, know thy metrics. Number 6, aim for an LTV to CAC ratio of 20 or greater. And number 7, try out our interactive calculator and see how you compare versus the competitors. And last but not least, now is the time to grow your vacation rental inventory. So again, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Brooke. I'm with Vintory. Again, Vintory is a sales and marketing platform that helps professional vacation rental managers add more properties to their rental program. So thank you very much. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me at Brooke, BROOKE @vintory.com. Thank you very much.